Hello, my friends. Nice to be here with you again. Luiz Lima here from Florida. This is Kardec Radio, and you are watching our weekly program, Spiritism, a closer look. Tonight's topic, tonight, we are going to take a closer look at letting go. That's a complicated thing. Before we start, if you have any comments, any questions, suggestions, you can use our Facebook page or kardecradio.com, either way, and just give us your comments, let us know. This topic is actually part of the Spiritist codification in a big way. Chapters, there are two chapters on part 4 of the Spirit's book that deal with that. Part 4 of the Spirit's book is called Hopes and Consolations. There are two chapters with several questions, very extensive coverage on the subject, very interesting, by the way. And part 4 of the Spirit's book later on is going to be extended, and it becomes the book Heaven and Hell. So there's a Heaven and Hell is a thick book, you can see here. So there's a lot of information on the codification itself. Of course, there's a lot of information on the extended Spiritist literature, but it's a subject that Allan Kardec put a lot of emphasis on because I think it's complicated for all of us. Letting go. Wow. Well, let me start saying this. The idea, the general idea of letting go does not please anyone. Does not please anyone. But for some reason, we don't like it. Okay. When you say letting go, when I refer to letting go, it's very broad, very generic. It could be a lot of things. It could be several different things. So let's look at some of the things that could be. What I'm going to mention here is not everything. This is just a brief idea of letting go and how we deal with that based on the codification. So letting go, it could be something so simple like an object, a possession that you have, and you have a hard time letting go for some reason. It just has a meaning, has an attached value or an attached meaning for you. And it happens to all of us, especially kids. They don't like to let things go, the small toys and objects. But there's one point that's very interesting, which is actually in one of the André Luiz books, in two of his books, when he talks about psychometry in museums and antique stores. Of course, you have a lot of objects that belong years and centuries sometimes ago or prior to that. It belonged to other people. And, these people died, and whoever was left in charge either didn't see the same value or they just wanted, to sell, whatever reason. So these things go to museums and antique stores. And a lot of times, mediums that go to these places, when they are close to some of these objects, they feel a very strong presence, as if somebody was pushing them away, saying, "This is mine, don't touch." Mediums, they feel that. It's very interesting. So the idea of not letting go of a possession, it goes even beyond this life. That's one type of letting go. Here's another one: physical habits. It involves chemistry in the body, physical dependency. So, smoking, drinking, drugs, anything like this. They are habits that are very complicated. People, whoever gets into those things, they have a hard time getting out of it. It's very difficult. It's a physical habit. Another type of letting go is letting go of people, but not death. Not death, just letting go of people. For example, you have a very close friend or colleague or co-worker that you're really close to, and they move out. They go to another job, they go to another city, another country. So that's a letting go. You have to, they will go, or sometimes it's the other way around. You are going somewhere. And Of course we're going to feel, because we like those people, we would love to continue being with them, but because of life circumstances, we're not going to it's not going to be possible. So sometimes we do have a hard time letting go that kind of situation. And especially one that's especially difficult is for parents when their kids go away to school, college, whatever school it is. Parents have a hard time. It's kind of, I'm losing a part of me. Very difficult for us to deal with. And it's just part of life. In a way, we don't want them to stay under our arms and umbrellas for life. Of course, we don't want that. On the other hand, we don't want them to go. So it brings up a clear conflict of emotions here for parents, especially parents. So difficult. Here's another one: non physical related habits. So something underlying at the emotional level, spiritual level, either. They play a role against ourselves when we are trying to become better people. They will come our way, cross our way, and make things difficult for us. And this is the letting go of hatred, envy, pride, selfishness, intolerance, impatience, in general, vices. These vices, they have been around with us for several lives. It's not something that started 2 decades ago, 3 years ago. No, they have been following us, if you will, for several lives. It's hard to let them go. We have a hard time with that. And probably the worst of all, the most complicated and difficult and the most challenging, to say the least, is the loss of a loved one. That is really complicated. It involves physical pain at times for certain people, very deep emotional pain for others. Of course, it's not the same thing for everyone, but it is a complicated process. All of these types of letting goes, per se, that we mentioned here briefly, they all have a common denominator. All of them at different degrees, but they all have a common denominator, which is they cause suffering at a certain degree. More in some cases, less in others. Is not the same for all people, but all of them, they cause suffering and discomfort, to say the least. And that's where we start having all these internal conflicts about letting go. I don't want to let this go. I know I have to. Most of us know, especially us spiritists. I think it's so clear throughout the spiritist literature that we have to let things go. But still, it doesn't mean that it's easy. Nobody's saying it's easy. It's not at all. So what's really holding us back? It's basically uncertainty. There's no assurance of what's going to happen. It's the unknown. Things are going to be under a new perspective. Am I ready for it? Am I not? All these things, they go deep into our souls, and it generates challenges. It creates challenges for us to overcome these things. In the book Heaven and Hell, Allan Kardec has a very interesting phrase. Of course, guided by the spirits. They say, we carry with us our heaven or our hell wherever we go. That explains in part why it's so difficult. If some sort of loss, one of those that I mentioned, it doesn't have to be death of a loved one. It could be one of the other ones. But if that for us is a hell, I mean, I decided that this is complicated, very difficult. It's my hell. It's my Everest mount that I have to transpose, and it's complicated. This is gonna be with me wherever I go. Sometimes we don't want to stay in a house that somebody close to us passed, so we go somewhere else. But the lack of the physical presence of the person is still there. So I'm gonna have to go through a healing process. Until I get past that healing process, It's going to be the same wherever I go. These letting goes, they are situations, and they are necessary stepping stones. If nothing ever changes, if we don't go through these things, we don't learn. For example, going through a death of, let's just say, a parent, for example, or even a son, but let's say a parent. It might be complicated for some, traumatizing for others. It might not matter for others because they were not close enough to the parent. But still, it's a necessary stepping stone. I have to go past that. If we have a destination and we know what that is, perfection, if we have a destination, we have to go through every single possible situation, good and bad, all of them, including losses and letting things in the past, leaving things behind. It's just part of our transformation towards perfection. We have to allow that. So these things, they should not bring us down. They do at times, but they should not bring us down. We should be alive inside with this, I would say, tenacious desire to be better, to live above all that. You see, death of a loved one, for example, is another experience. I'm not saying it's good or we shouldn't pay attention. That's not what I'm saying. But it's another experience. It's another milestone because now I know something that I didn't know before, for example. When a very close person to us dies, it could be a family member or a partner, life partner, something like that. It's another milestone. It's another experience that we pile up experiences as we go along, and that's what makes us better. To be perfect, I have to have had that experience at least once. So it's just part of life. Life is always better than it seems, always. The problem is sometimes we are shadowed by our inability, by our own inability to see goodness on things. So the word death for maybe 99.99% of the population means something negative, something that I don't see any good in that. It could be your perspective. Well, how about the person who was, say, suffering in a hospital bed for 6 months or 10 years? They might not have the same perspective that we do. They might, see it differently. So life is not, it is always better than it seems. We are the ones bringing ourselves down. As we become better, we can make others better. And that's one of the goals. That's the moral charity, making others better. But in order for that to happen, I need to become better first. How do I become better? Through stepping stones, through good and bad experiences that I'm going to go through, but I'm going to leave them in the past. I'm learning from them, but I'm not going to get stuck and live forever and ever on that day. Because we see spirits that discarnate, and in spiritist centers, they show up on their mediumistic meetings, and they're suffering spirits. They are invited over by the mentors of the center for the session. They show up. They start saying, I had, let's just say, I had a car accident. I'm waiting for help." And this has been for 400 years, 300 years. It's incredible. Just the other day, a couple of weeks ago, maybe, we ran a program on one of the stories here on the book Heaven and Hell about a monk called Benoit. I urge you to go and just, it's in the index. You're going to see Benoit, the monk. Read the transcript of his mediumistic communication. It's incredible. He doesn't even believe he can get better. So all these things, we have to allow us to be better so we can serve others, and then we get much better. We got to love ourselves to be lovable. If we don't love ourselves, we're not going to be lovable, because we're not going to attract that kind of energy. Hating ourselves brings hatred. So here's Spiritism, which comes to us as this great counselor, helper, if you will. It will bring, in the words of Allan Kardec, a new order of ideas that will facilitate us complying with this letting go needs that we have to, go through. Spiritism brings a new perspective on the facts of life. It makes us see things from a different light. There is another possibility always. There's never one possibility. There is at least another one. So let's look at least a second view, a second angle of things. So when we have to go through these letting go things, depending on how hard it is for us, sometimes we have the tendency to think it's an evil thing. Why am I being put in this situation? Why am I going through this? Well, I'll tell you one thing based on Spiritism. There is nothing evil about the concept of letting go. It's not evil, it's progress. It's what makes us better. It's what makes us better. And Spiritism is based on what? On a reference, on a moral reference. Where is that moral reference? Jesus brought it to us. It is based on the moral teachings of Jesus. And it's very clear, I think so by now, that Jesus, truly in our hearts, we can't go down. Jesus is this road of true goodness, the Spirit tells us. Jesus is this road of true goodness. With Jesus truly in our hearts, we can't be at war at ourselves. We can't. No way. We cannot be at war with ourselves. Internal conflict. With Jesus in our heart, truly in our heart. It's not possible. So, coming back to the most difficult of all these letting goes, which is the death of a loss of a loved one, loss of people who are really close to us. Some of these people, when they go, or before they go actually, they have to go through long processes, illnesses. A lot of people are in hospital beds, I just mentioned that, for several months, some of them several years before they're passing. It's really difficult for them and for those who are watching, the family members, colleagues, whatever, friends, those close to that person. So we all suffer. But Spiritism teaches one thing. That process is necessary for all parts involved. Okay, what are the parts involved? Well, let's mention some here. So we're getting an example of somebody who is in a hospital bed for, say, quite a few years. So who are the parts involved? The person who is about to pass, family members, maybe a spouse, who would be the closest one, but family members, sons, daughters, something like that. But not all of that. That's not all of it. Doctors, nurses, health professionals, everybody is part of the process. That person's passing with the family, suffering around and so, is for the doctor another experience that he piles up on his list. It isn't, I'm not saying it's good, please, don't get me wrong. But for him, for her, it is another experience. For the nurses, it is another experience to have to deal with another patient, leaving Earth or passing. So all parts involved. are going through that because it is necessary for everybody. That's another thing that Spiritism teaches us. So we have this tendency to revolt. Just doctor couldn't save the person. Please, we're all gonna die one day. There is no such a thing as this doctor is gonna extend my life until the end of times. There is no such a thing. Same for nurses and health professionals. So all of them, they're part of it. There's a bond. There's a bond that brings them all together. And one thing is, that's the Spiritist consolation. We will get past the tears. We will get past the tears. Absolutely. These letting go moments are milestones along the way. Now, one day, at one point, we're going to look back and say, wow, I remember that particular moment. Wow, I had to overcome all of this and this. That's what a milestone is. Something that you have to overcome. We will all have our tears, get past our tears, all of us. These moments, these transitions, all these letting go moments, they define a before and after for us on every aspect with different intensities. Death of a loved one has a great intensity. Other things have maybe less intensity, but they are all before and after moments. Before and after means transformation, change. And we don't change for worse, we change for better. Revolt is no way of getting any help. Anger, rage, rebellion, none of this is any way to get help. Not at all. It will make us worse because now we have not only we have to deal with the situation, but we are bringing negative feelings, emotions, sentiments, which attract the same thing. So now it got worse. No anger, no hatred, no revolt, no rage, nothing like this. So for us that are missing our loved ones, do you miss a loved one? I think we all do at a certain degree. Spiritism tells us, pay attention to this. Death is the future life. Death is the future life. Death itself defines what life is. When somebody goes, when a loved one passes, of course we miss him, of course. We will cry our tears, yes, we will. Before we get past the tears, yeah, it's going to be difficult. But think about this, it's a little bit of a conflict. Why do we miss that person? Let's say a month after. Why are we still missing the person 30 days after the fact? Because in spirit, that person is still with us. Translating into a better language, their spiritual body, their perispirit, is still here with us. We can still feel it, sense it in a way. But the physical body is not. So I feel the presence and I look around and I don't see the person's body. I don't see that person incarnated anymore. That's a conflict. It's a tremendous conflict. But here's something. There is presence in every absence. If they're absent because they passed, there's presence in it. That presence, it's what it shakes me. It makes me suffer or not, depending on how I see, but it makes me feel that person with me. There is presence in every absence. So these are all learning lessons. If we want to serve others, And we better do that because that's how we get better, and faster towards perfection. If we want to serve others, we have to be able to teach the lessons that we learned. How am I going to console somebody who just who just lost a loved one, if I have never lost a loved one myself? It's going to be a little bit complicated because I don't have what it takes to feel what that person is feeling. Maybe I felt last year, 10 years ago. I have to have passed that first, and I have to have passed my tears to be able to be productive in a way to help that person. In the conclusion of the Spirits book, there's a very interesting phrase. There's a whole text, not the conclusion. I'm sorry, the prolegomena of the Spirits book, and it ends with a phrase, short phrase, and that phrase is this: God cannot use the blind to explain the light. I'm going to say that again. God cannot use the light cannot use the blind to explain the light. That's what I was just talking about. If I haven't passed that as a life experience, I can't help people who are passing that with the same, I would say, caliber of emotional charge that I could. I just don't have that because I haven't seen that yet. So to sum up, do we want to be blind or do we want to be the light? We want to be the light. We want to be the light, but we can't be blind to explain the light. So these life experiences are milestones. They pile up on our spiritual history in our favor. It's not God making me suffer. It's not God that I have to rebel against. It's not, anger that I need to feel. No. It's a valid, more than valid, it's a necessary life experience. Okay, my friends, thank you very much for participating with us. And Spiritism A Closer Look will be here next week, Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you next time. Be well. Thank you so much.